Welcome back to the Explainer, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today. So, you know how in our Class 5 session, we really dug in and laid down the geometry for the front bodice block? We mastered those foundational curves, we conquered the darts, the whole shebang. Well, today, we're stepping right back into the design studio for a highly detailed, step-by-step masterclass on drafting the back bodice block. We're going to take all that logic we learned previously and apply it straight to the back of the garment. And I promise you, by the end of this, you will literally have the complete foundation for pretty much any upper body garment. Okay, you ready? Let's dive right into this. Here is a quick look at our agenda for today's masterclass. We'll start with front versus back bodice, then setting the base rectangle, drafting neckline and shoulder, armhole and side seam, professional final checks, and wrap up with next steps and practice. Let's keep moving. All right, section 1, front versus back bodice, the foundation. Okay, so before we even think about picking up a pencil or drawing a single line on our drafting paper, we absolutely have to understand the why. Why are we doing this differently? Well, because the back of our body lacks bust volume, right? So the entire back bodice actually needs to be narrower and much flatter. Let's just walk through these anatomical differences real quick. Notice the neckline depths. The front drops a pretty deep 7 centimeters, while the back, it only drops about 2. For darts, obviously the front needs a bust dart for volume, but the back might only have a tiny shoulder dart, or honestly, none at all. Now, the overall width of the back is based on your upper back measurement, which makes it inherently narrower than the front. And finally, the armhole depth. Notice how they are marked as completely equal? We really need to look a bit closer at that one. I really want to clear up a major misconception right now. You can kind of think of it as the optical illusion of pattern making. You might look at a finished pattern and swear, absolutely swear, that the front armhole is cut much deeper than the back. But in standard basic block methods, the front and back armhole depth are kept exactly equal. No exceptions. The front just appears way more scooped and curved because all that intricate bust shaping is happening right there in that space. But the actual vertical depth, it does not change at all. Moving right along to section 2. Setting the base rectangle, steps 1 and 2. Let's lay down our foundation. First up, we're going to recreate our vertical line A to B. This represents your shoulder to waist measurement, and it is the exact same length as your front bodice. Simple enough. Now for the width. From point A, we just draw a horizontal line to create point C, and from point B, we draw a horizontal line for the waist, which creates point D. So the absolute crucial part here is how we actually calculate the width for point C. Here's the formula. You take your bust measurement plus ease, you divide it by 4, and then, here's the kicker. You subtract 1 centimeter. Why minus 1? Well, exactly like we just discussed, the back is naturally narrower than the front. Okay, section 3. Drafting neckline and shoulder, steps 3 and 4. Let's move up to the upper quadrant and look at the exact difference at the neckline. For the front neckline, you have that deep, sweeping 7 centimeter drop we drafted last time. It's very pronounced. But for our back neckline, it's a whole different story. From point A, we drop down a very shallow, barely there 2 centimeters to mark point N1. Then we move horizontally to the right about 7 centimeters to mark N2. When you actually connect N1 to N2, the curve is so incredibly slight, it almost looks like a straight line. Next up, from point N2, we draw our sloping shoulder line. The length for this is just your shoulder width divided by 2, but wait, here is a fantastic professional secret for you. We actually add 1 to 1.5 centimeters of extra length to this line. In the industry, we call this professional ease. Why do we do this? Well, when you eventually sew the front and back shoulders together, this tiny bit of extra fabric is gently eased in, and that is exactly what allows the seam to sit perfectly smoothly over the natural rounded curve of the human shoulder blade. It's a total game changer. Let's hit section 4. Armhole and side seam, steps 5, 6, and 7. All right, let's complete our perimeter by drawing the back armhole for step 5. We're going to draw a smooth, sweeping curve from the end of our shoulder line right down to point C. Now let's slow down for just a second and reiterate our golden rule here. The absolute depth of this curve perfectly matches the front. However, when you step back and look at the visual shape you've just drawn, it is significantly less scooped and less rounded than the front armhole. It's much flatter. To wrap up the actual drafting phase, step 6 just has us draw a straight line from point C down to point D. This right here is your side seam. And listen, it is absolutely vital that the length of this line mirrors your front bodice side seam perfectly. I mean, they have to be sewn together like a giant puzzle, right? Finally, step 7 brings up an optional shoulder dart. If you want a really close, beautifully tailored fit, you can pinch out a small 1 to 1.5 centimeter dart right in the middle of that shoulder line. But if you're just going for a basic, looser sloper, you can safely skip it. Totally up to you. We are on to Section 5, Professional Final Checks. Huge congratulations, you've drafted the block. But hold your horses. We are definitely not done. It is time to shift gears into quality assurance. As the old saying goes, measure twice, cut once, right? You need to physically take your paper patterns, put them side by side on your workspace, and validate your work with 3 mandatory checks. Check 1. Do the shoulder seams match? Keep in mind, the back will be slightly longer because of that pro ease we added earlier. That's completely normal. Check 2. Are the side seams the exact same length? They have to be. And check 3, which is crucial. When you place the side seams and shoulder seams together, do the front and back armholes form one beautifully smooth, continuous curve without any sharp corners or weird jagged jumps. And finally, Section 6, Next Steps and Practice. So, if your pattern passes all those professional checks, you have successfully drafted a bodice sloper. Amazing work. So here is your homework. You need to physically combine your front and back slopers. If you have access to a sewing machine, I highly recommend tracing this pattern onto some scrap fabric or muslin and just cutting and sewing a basic toile. Feeling it in 3D fabric, it completely changes the game. Also, make sure you bring your measuring tape to Class 7. Why? Because our next logical step is drafting the sleeve block, and we're going to need extremely precise measurements of that beautiful armhole you just created to make that happen. And that brings us to the end of today's masterclass. I want to leave you with a direct challenge based on everything we've just learned. Go grab your measuring tape right now, lay out your drafted blocks, and honestly ask yourself, do your front and back bodice armholes genuinely form a perfectly smooth, continuous curve? Test your work, trust the math, and I will see you in the next explainer.